Okay. Well, just for everyone who is here right now, I just want to say good morning and welcome. We have Greg Starkman, founder of Innocence Organic Beauty here, and we also have our special guest joining us from Women's Voices for the Earth. We have Alex Gorman-Scranton. She's our Alex. You're director of science what is your
director of science and research at
right? Science and research, yes. And so Alex and Greg here are going to, speak today about our exposure risks behind the chair as professionals. So we'll get started in a couple minutes. We just ask you, please, if you could just keep yourself on mute, just so we can eliminate any background noise. We are recording this as well. And if you have any questions in the entire call, we'll have 15 minutes at the end to answer those questions. So we just ask if you could put those in the chat, and we will go through those with 15 minutes left in the call. So enjoy the call. And if you have questions throughout it, just pop those in the chat and we will get to them at the end. Just give it just a few more minutes to see if anyone else wants to come in.
Sounds good.
And Greg, you have a very nice setup today in the studio.
I'm in the studio. Too much noise in my office.
All right, well, I think we can get started, and as people come in, they'll hop into the conversation. Again, this is recorded, so if anyone misses it, we can always share, and it's great information. So, okay, well, let's get started. So for those who might have joined while I was giving that little brief introduction, again, we have Greg Starkman, founder of Innocence Organic Beauty, who I'm sure some of you folks recognize from some of our emails and social media. And then we also have our special guest today, Women's Voices for the Earth, Director of Science and Research, Alex Gorman-Scranton. And again, today's topic is all about chemical exposure behind the chair as professionals. And really, the point of this call today is to, one, let you all know about this wonderful organization, Women's Voices for the Earth, one of our People and Planet partners, and what their work, what their work is, why we are involved with Women's Voices for the Earth, and then how innocence is really, just a partner with them, and how our products truly, pardon the pun, make sense for the professional that is, looking to decrease their exposure risks and chemicals. So I want to take us through, Alex, I would love for you to just share with our community, who, the what, the why of Women's Voices for the Earth. If you wouldn't mind just giving a background on the organization and yourself as well.
Sure, yeah. So again, I'm Alex Scranton. I'm Director of Science and Research. Women's Voices for the Earth is a women's environmental health nonprofit organization. We were founded in Montana in 2005, so we're celebrating, sorry, not 2005, 1995. We're celebrating our 25th year this year. And our mission is to amplify women's voices to eliminate the toxic chemicals that harm our health and communities. This means we work with the power of women to create change. And specifically, our focus has been on toxic chemicals present in household and things like salon products that women disproportionately use and are affected by. So within that broad scope, one of our areas of expertise is toxic chemicals in salon products. We've been working on that for a number of years. And their disproportionate impact on salon workers who were really heavily exposed through their jobs. So my job as Director of Science and Research, I'm kind of the geek on staff. I do the research on chemicals. I'm not in a lab. I don't have, I don't have a lab coat. But what I do is I look at what's in the scientific literature. What do we know about the chemicals that are present in products? I read a lot of ingredient labels. And then what do we know about those chemicals and what they're doing to our bodies? And from there, I sort of try and translate that information. Sometimes it's kind of, technical, and put it in a form that we can use for our work. So we work to educate the public and those who are most affected in terms of helping people learn how to protect themselves as best they can. And then we create opportunities for interested folks to use their voices to create change for the better. because it's got to be more than just our staff. It's really all of you and your voices that make the big difference. So sometimes it's legislative work. We work at both the House and federal level. We might work on trying to get a good bill passed. They'll be more protective for folks. Sometimes it's focused on a particular company or an industry, getting them to be more careful about the chemicals they use in their products, and getting folks who use their products to speak up and call them and tell them what they want. And so it really all involves voices beyond just Women's Voices for the Earth staff. We really try and create these opportunities for other people to share their experiences and then share what they really want and the vision that they have for a cleaner world. And that's what has been made us successful over the last 25 years in making products safer, which is our goal.
Thank you. And then Greg, just for anyone who may not, who's brand new to innocence, do you want to just give yourself a quick intro?
Sure. Well, I'm Greg Starkman. I'm the founder of Innocence Organic Beauty, and wow, thank you for being here. Listen, our mission really is very much parallel to Women of the Earth. I mean, it's really creating healthier, cleaner, safer products for beauty and wellness professionals as well as consumers. And we take a very conscious directive in the manner in which we curate and formulate our products to ensure that we're meeting those goals when we begin to craft products to bring to marketplace with, again, the safety in mind for both the beauty and wellness professionals that we serve, as well as consumers who are becoming very much empowered. And I think as green chemistry continues to evolve, as consumers become more and more educated, we're here to be a part of the education process, because of course, like all things, becomes a lot of mixed messages, a lot of confusion amongst marketing and branding statements. And so it's even more important for consumers as well as beauty and wellness professionals to be able to unpack what is being said and come up with a better understanding of what they're being told. And organizations like Women for the Earth, the Breast Cancer Coalition, Safe Cosmetics, they're also about helping educate and provide the information that allows consumers to make better, healthier, cleaner choices.
Amazing. So we've got just the perfect marriage here between clean, pure, beautiful.
We're gonna geek out. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, so Alex, Women's Voices of the Earth hosted a really amazing call called Detox Your Booth. Mm-hmm. And I loved listening to it, and I'd love to give little nuggets for our group here as well. And I loved how you spoke about how products for such a long time have been formulated to just do a job, but not for the health of the person using it. And I'd love for Greg and Alex, if you guys want to speak about, what hair care looks like when it's formulated for just the end goal in mind. And, but why is it important to be formulating for the health of the stylist as well? And Greg, if you can explain too, because you have a lot of background in both clean and conventional hair care.
Sure. Do you want me to start, Greg? Or?
Go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, largely what we have seen in our sort of investigations of the salon product industry is that most hair products, and really a lot of different products, they are largely designed by creators to achieve a particular function. So whether it's shiny hair, straightened hair, good hold, that they're going for the most effective product they can design, and then cost effective as well. They're looking at costs. And unfortunately, the safety of the chemicals that get used are less frequently considered. Most companies are going to be legal about it. They're going to make sure they're not using illegal chemicals or obeying laws and regulations. But the laws and regulations we have are really very weak. They're just not good enough to protect our health. So unfortunately, there are some terrible, harmful chemicals you're legally allowed to use in these products. They do an effective job on your hair, right? They do some great things, but they're also affecting your health. And it's really not until the product users will speak up about their symptoms or their adverse reactions, sometimes there's a lawsuit, then changes or considerations get made. And so there just hasn't this widespread culture for product designers to include both health and kind of the effectiveness of the product equally. And which granted is a lot harder to do. And I will, let Greg speak to that. It leads to a lot harder decisions. It narrows what you can use. It needs more research. It's definitely the harder road, which is exactly why at Women's Voices for the Earth, we like to partner with companies for innocence who are willing to go that extra step and take the harder road on making products, because it's definitely more difficult and more expensive, but we think it leads to better products. So I'll pass it off to you, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that there's a traditional paradigm in which product designers work. And, I kind of liken it to three pillars that they're forced to work within. One is performance, two is cost containment, and three is fragrance. Make it smell pretty and make it do what it's doing, and do it as cheap as possible. And, when you're working under those types of kind of barriers, so to speak, you're very limited, and then you're kind of forced to just work with a set of ingredients that are not really good and safe and healthy, but also then ultimately also compromising to the skin, the body, as well as the environment. And we're talking about a lot of ingredients that are very much petrochemical in base, resins, silicones, plasticizers. Again, these ingredients are just formulated to really provide a cosmetic or an exterior benefit onto the hair shaft. And those lead to other types of conditions. But when you're constantly layering these, you're just masking really what the true health of the hair is. I almost kind of liken it to taking a pain pill. After a while, that pain pill is not working anymore, so you keep taking more and more and more. It's the same thing when you're utilizing these types of ingredients. So with that being said, when you begin to formulate outside of that, yes, the commitment to the quality of ingredients you're utilizing that really provide the same type of performance, but work at a much different level. We're working with ingredients, to say at innocence, that really work to benefit the health of the hair without the use of, or utilizing those types of ingredients like resin, silicones, plasticizers, or other types of harsh chemicals that again are traditionally used. So it really requires a big commitment on the formulator side to say, I want to get around this, and the costs are substantially higher. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's why it's very difficult to take a product like innocence to mass. So, but we're doing it.
Great. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Amazing. Yeah. Greg, can you just speak a little bit about like the difference between that purpose and health, how innocence bridges that gap with not sacrificing performance for the health of the stylist? Like what makes our products so different from conventional?
I think that we really start with ingredients that are plant sourced. And not only are we curating these ingredients to ensure that they're pure, but we're also focused in the manner in which they're processed, right? Because I can get something that is naturally derived, but then it's how is it processed? What is the supply chain to bringing it to the product? A lot of ingredients like coconut can literally be sourced. By the time it goes through its process, it could be subjected to a lot of chemicals, a lot of types of solvents to break it down. It's manipulated, or what we call adulterated, in the lab to help enhance its performance. They're exposed to ethylene oxides. So all of these things in between. And so it's equally as important that we make sure that when we curate an ingredient, that we're controlling the manner in which it's processed and making sure that it's not exposed to what we call ethoxylating processes. We cold press or distillate the majority of our ingredients. And we do that to ensure, one, the purity, but then also to ensure the efficacies of the ingredient, that it's going to provide the benefit to really deliver the emolliencies that we want to the hair, to provide health and nutrition and really kind of replenish, and then really work from the inside out, not focusing solely on the exterior of the hair. So we work with a lot of really wonderful ingredients that are very emollient, that are efficacious. And then we also have to utilize these ingredients at very concentrated levels to get them to provide the type of quality and the performance that we want. Understand, Joanne and I come from behind the chair, so the expectation on high quality, high performance is really critical for us because we know what the expectation of the salon stylist is, and we need to match that. But again, in order to achieve that, we need to use ingredients that are high in concentration, high in efficacies to really provide the emolliencies from the hydration and the nutrition point of view. And then we work with a lot of really wonderful ingredients like pullion and sucroses and honeys that really provide fixative benefits. And then we're actually utilizing aloe veras so that we're not only replenishing, but building from a styling point of view. And so all of these ingredients that I just speak to really work in synergy to provide health and nutrition to the hair and allow it to be at its healthiest natural state without creating film and buildup on the hair shaft like traditional products that ultimately then just basically create dryness, dullness, weight onto the hair shaft, and then ultimately also create other types of conditions onto the hair shaft as well. And then the last part I'll speak to is fragrance, because I think that this is probably one of the biggest challenges that a lot of companies really fall short on. You know, fragrances are probably one of the most toxic components of any product. And when you're working with synthetic fragrances, they contain a lot of toxic-based ingredients. And then, you know, at the consumer level, exposure rate is there, but at the professional level, when you're working with these types of products all day long and you're ingesting and inhaling these, this is when the overexposure could lead to health issues and have a lot of disruption, not only from the industry disruption centers of the body, but also into the lungs. And again, beauty and wellness professionals have the highest rates of issues relative to cancers as well. And I think a lot of that is just due to overexposure of these very types of ingredients. So we actually work with all essential oil-based fragrances that are all naturally cold pressed and distillated to really maintain the purity, and they're not, again, exposed to any type of ethylene oxides or any other types of chemicals that would be deemed as toxic. So it's really important to not only understand all of the ingredients that are in a product, but really kind of drill it down. So.
Well, and you bring up our kind of next topic here, Greg, is the exposure risk piece. So Alex, in your call, I know you brought up, about making that connection of not being given the tools to do your job safely. You know, when we go to beauty school and we get exposed to whatever products that we have to work with there, that's it, right? And then we go out, we go into a salon, perhaps maybe a salon works with a particular type of product, but maybe you don't have a say in what you use. But just even with that, there's a lot of things I remember you were saying about, that there's sometimes people are getting rashes on their hands from the products that they use, or, they're asking themselves, why do I get a headache at work, but like not anywhere else, right? And so I would love for you, if you could share some stats, exposure risk stats, especially since Greg, brought up some really great points here. I'd love for you to, back it up or, blow our minds with some of the exposure risks that, stylists face, especially from the standpoint of, like Greg was saying, fragrance, aerosols, whatever you've got.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is, where our research has found very clearly, unfortunately, that salons can be a hazardous place to work due to the chemical exposures from salon products. People don't think about a salon being sort of so chemically intensive as, like a chemical plant or something, but there are actually some real comparisons that salon workers are paying for with their health, right? And the salon workers that I have met over my time at Women's Voices for the Earth, these are hardy. I mean, you guys are hardy. You love your work, and you're more than willing to accept a few symptoms which seem like little inconveniences. Whether it's like, as you're saying, rashes on your hands, a headache that tends to go away when you're not working, a cough that kind of lingers when you're doing certain services. It seems like a minor thing to be able to do this work that you love to do. But these are all symptoms that can indicate more long-term health problems, and they're unfair. You should be able to do your work and still be totally healthy, but you're not being given products that will assure. We're largely not being given products that will assure that that can happen. So what we've learned, there's very little research that specifically follows salon workers saying, you know, these salon workers use these products containing these chemicals and they had these impacts. Like, that research is almost never done. Unlike in some other industries. But what we do now are kind of general surveys of what are salon workers experiencing that is different at high, you know, disproportionately rates compared to other professions. And there are a number of studies where particularly hairdressers will kind of come to the top. So it starts certainly with skin conditions. Some surveys have found over 60% of salon workers suffer from skin conditions such as dermatitis, largely on their hands. And it usually starts in cosmetology school. Like within the first 6 months to a year, you're having symptoms on your hands that you never had before, and these can be lifelong symptoms. Greg raised the issue of fragrance, which we've worked on a lot. The most recent study I found that hairdressers and beauticians have a 47-fold higher risk of fragrance skin allergies than people in other occupations. I mean, you don't see numbers like that. 47-fold is just, it's 4,700%. I mean, it's outrageous, but it's because of all the different fragrance products you're being exposed to over time. And these are, you know, things that you'll have allergies for the rest of your life, right? Due to these risks. Breathing chemicals is a major pathway in the salon. And as a result, we're seeing hairdressers and nail salon workers having decreased lung function compared to people in other professions. They have higher risks of developing asthma. These are things that we've seen. There are, unfortunately, reproductive effects. There are a lot of chemicals that are used, particularly those petrochemicals and solvents, that can harm your either ability to have a baby or can harm, you know, a baby when you're pregnant. So you're more likely to give birth to low birth weight babies. There's increased risk of miscarriage, increased risk of certain birth defects among hairdressers. These risks are still low, but they're higher than other professions, which is just unnecessary and unfair. And then there are several types of cancer. Specifically, studies that we've seen are higher rates of breast cancer, lung cancer, larynx cancer, bladder cancer, and multiple myeloma. These are things that seem to be higher, particularly in hairdressers. And these chemicals also, again, largely the ones that are sort of gassing off that you're breathing in, the ones that are giving you a headache or might make you feel dizzy, they are affecting your brain. So we're seeing higher rates of depression that are commonly found in hairdressers, and higher risks of dying of things, neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and similar diseases like that. So we're seeing effects on the brain over a lifetime of exposure to these chemicals. So these are the things that, you know, we wrote a report called Beauty and Its Beast, which is on our website. You can download it, which has links to all these studies. We've got some good fact sheets that kind of explain this, and just sort of pulling that information together, because people are like, well, I'm healthy and I love doing this work and it's just a little symptom, but over the long term, these can really add up to some serious impacts, which is what we're trying to change, so that, you know, you can have beautiful products that are really effective that won't have these long-term effects.
And I would venture to also say 2 points is that, you know, it's the stylist that has been in it for 10 to 15 years that's going to begin to notice these very issues. And then second, the biggest culprit to off-gassing and exposure is hair color, especially if you're putting it under the dryer, because that's even further magnifying, as well as nail products within the salon environment, which I know you are very passionate about as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's hard to, you know, pin these things on certain products. We don't always know, but certainly nail products, hair dyes, things like hair straighteners and perms. These are chemicals that seem to come up a lot as those with tremendous impacts. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure at least one of us on this call is like mind blown. I am for sure by the stats. Greg, you know, I kind of want to go you and Alex with a kind of a rapid fire real quick so we can kind of get to the next thing. But as far as exposure risk goes, I'd love for us to kind of quickly, like, what are our quick thoughts on fragrances and how it's a proprietary secret?
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex. I know,
Okay.
and then I have one big piece to add to it, but go ahead.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. No. So I was like, and please stop me because I can talk for like hours on fragrance because I've done a lot of research on it. Fragrance generally, if there's a product that's fragrance, if it has ingredients on the label, it just says fragrance, right? A fragrance can be up to 100 different chemicals. We have looked into. There's a list that the fragrance industry publishes, which is about 3,000, 4,000 chemicals long. We've done some analysis of these chemicals. About a third of them have been specifically flagged by scientists around the world as chemicals of concern because of various health effects. So there are some really, really dangerous ones on that list. You know, carcinogens and reproductive toxins, certainly things that can lead to breathing problems. You never know which ones are in the fragrance that you're being exposed to because you're just given the word fragrance, which is a real problem. So we've done a lot of work. And certainly Salon workers have helped with this a great deal of getting companies to more voluntarily disclose what fragrances they're using, what they're actually in there, so that we can get a better handle on what people are being exposed to, and companies can, be more upfront about the carcinogens they're using or not. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that is one of the biggest areas where a formulator designing a product has an opportunity to hide anything that they don't want you to know. Often, sometimes if it says silicone free, that's where they can put some silicone and you would never know it. And the same thing if you have a product and you look at the back of the label and it says proprietary blend or proprietary complex, then, that's another area where someone can hide ingredients they don't want you to know. Again, they can make an on-label claim of free of, and then again, put that ingredient in that very compound as well. So that's a really big point. The other thing that really just kind of amazed me as not only a formulator, but as a stylist. Of course, both organizations were very much in support of California legislation that we were all pushing last year, which was about fragrance disclosure. And we all spent a lot of time at Capitol Hill, at the state capitol as well, lobbying lawmakers to force companies to disclose their fragrances as well, and really the makeup of that. And I think the thing that was really disheartening for me was to hear these lawmakers basically say, well, we're told by industry that what they're doing is safe. And I'm kind of a little baffled because I'm industry. Right. And the reality is industry are these chemical companies that develop these ingredients, right? They don't want any type of oversight whatsoever. But then coupled with the number of companies that were coming out and saying, we support this, but then they were heavily funding the opposition to it. So it's really kind of the political roundtable to this is very frustrating, especially for a company so committed as we are. And we're not the only company. There are many, many companies. I mean, we're part of the coalition of many, many companies that work to really create a better, healthier industry. But it is absolutely amazing how the industry can work against itself when it doesn't need to, unfortunately. So just a little bit of background information to that. So hopefully we're getting ramped up in the era of COVID to bring the bill back into the House, and hope that we're going to get some better response this time around. And then hopefully we're going to be able to take this as well as part of federal legislation that's now also pending before the House. So
suffice to say, Greg, our Inky Dex disclosure is what you see is exactly what you're getting.
We disclose everything that's in our products. So, we utilize, again, all natural based emollient oils as our fragrance, and that's what's on our labels.
I want to quickly just touch on, because I know we have I want to save some time for questions at the end. So I just want to talk to really quick about, if Alex, Greg, if you guys have any insights on, adulterated oils or laced ingredients, and also maybe if we can debunk that myth of if it's silicone, sulfate, paraben free, it must be safe.
Yeah. that's a good one that we certainly hear all the time. You know, I mean, it's a sign of the industry slightly starting to move. You know, whatever, 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't have had products that said silicone, sulfate, or paraben free. Nobody knew what a paraben was. And we've been doing a lot of work to elevate these issues. Like there are these toxic chemicals that you need to be worried about. So it's great that some companies are taking some of these things out, but it's, you know, it's like this minor first step. It really, you know, you really need to be designing products from the beginning for safety for across the board. So just having these few products that, you know, are chemicals that they're saying are not in there is certainly no guarantee, because there's so many other issues. I know Greg, you can probably talk more about where these things are actually hidden in products that say that they're free of them.
Right. You know, and I think that, you know, sulfates, I'm really happy that they're replacing them, but what are they replacing them with, right? And, you know, what are the alternatives? You know, and we're finding, especially in natural products, they might be removing sodium lauryl sulfate, but then they have sodium lauryl sulfonates, which are equally as bad as sulfates, or cocamidobetanes, which are a synthetically derived surfactant that mirrors DEAs. So these are the things that they kind of, I don't have any more hair to pull out, but silicone replacements, polyquaterniums, I mean, these are ingredients that, again, have the same type of functionality to them. Or I can buy ingredients like shea butter that have been adulterated, to Ari's point. These are ingredients that don't have to change the label or how they're disclosed on the inky deck, but they've been adulterated to include these ingredients on the back end, and they don't have to be disclosed because, again, it's just the quality or the base. I always say I can go out and buy 15 different types of shea butter that are commercially processed. You don't know what happened during that processing time. It's like see no evil, speak no evil. So, but you can feel it in your hands, right? That's the beauty, and that's why I'm always putting products in my hands. For those of you who've watched my education, it's always about really kind of not only reading the labels, but then feeling the product. Are you feeling this? So that's, your hands are intuitive.
Amazing.
So, but the last thing I just want to say to this point, which is really important, is that yes, marketers and companies are stepping up to try to address what they know and what they see as the emerging consumer trends. And you have retailers coming up with their standards, some better than others, that sometimes lead to a false, kind of like a false, you know, safety to the consumer. And that's why as consumers and as professionals, you have to do your research. You have to drill down. And that's why I'm so excited for Alex to be here, because this is stuff that I'm always saying. And, you know, it's so nice when you have someone from the other side also able to validate the things that we're saying. It's not about marketing. It's just about, you know, speaking what's not so beautiful about the truth of beauty. So.
Right.
Well, we appreciate working with you because we get, you know, sort of that insider's view that we don't get to see. I mean, the supply chain is a huge issue that's very, very opaque. It's really hard to research what's happening in the supply chain and what people are using, unless you're actually ordering things from the supply chain and taking them apart, which you guys are doing, you know. So that's been a great to work with you guys on that.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, you know, I wanted to also bring up, Alex, you know, right now, if this is probably the most timely topic, is PPE. And obviously right now professionals are working with PPE, and for those of you who don't know, it's personal protection equipment, in salons as they've been opening back up wherever you are. You know, obviously the main reasons due to COVID and keeping us, you know, safe and non-exposed from that standpoint. But really, if you could speak to the benefits of PPE beyond this crisis, or even why we should be using them even before right now, you know, what are the benefits to PPE, like outside of what we're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's been an interesting issue that has changed so quickly in the last several months. it's always been a concern. We've seen a lot of studies where, you know, it's really gloves and masks are kind of the basic PPE for salon workers. And there's been a real hesitation among a lot of salon workers to wear those, right? Whether it's you don't want to freak out your customers, or it just looks weird, or, you know, whatever it is, it's, you know, harder to work if you're wearing gloves with certain products. But the studies have shown that generally your exposure is going to be reduced if you're wearing them. If you're using products where you can't avoid the chemicals in the products because these are the products you have to work with, having something that will prevent you from breathing something in to a certain degree, and some masks are better than others for preventing, you know, chemical exposures, and certainly what gets absorbed through your hands is a major pathway, and you're going to absorb a lot less wearing gloves. So what's happening now as salons are reopening is that, you know, I mean, your customers are expecting you to be wearing a mask and gloves, and they won't go to you unless you're wearing them. So I think there's a real advantage both in terms of protecting your health and protecting your customers' health, you know, from potential infection. You're also going to be protecting yourself from some of the chemical exposures. I think ventilation is also another really important issue that because it goes hand in hand with PPE. Ventilation, because there are so many chemicals used in these products, when you can't avoid them with safer products, because for some categories there just are very few safer opportunities right now. Breathing them in is the problem. So having a poorly ventilated space will really affect your health compared to having a well ventilated space. So we always like to encourage that. But I sort of hope, even past COVID, that PPE is, you know, considered normal in a salon and will continue to get used until we can get safer products across the board.
Amazing. And so, you know, Alex, I would love for you to kind of give us a kind of a golden rule, or, you know, maybe a couple of, you know, how can we decrease our chemical exposure? What are the kind of the big pillars or big ideas for us to really adopt? And then Greg, if you could maybe speak to how, you know, innocence is probably a go-to product for decreasing chemical exposure.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of it is, you know, doing your research. So to some degree, you can look at what products you're using and looking for safer products, which are really hard to identify. You can find brands like innocence that you're going to trust, but for so, you know, they're not making every salon product that's out there. So it's, you know, it's tricky. It's reading those labels. It's asking the suppliers what, you know, what's in there and what they know about them. Some of it is, you know, really listening to yourself and listening to what impacts you're having. If you're having trouble breathing using a product, if it's giving you a headache, if it's giving you a rash, think about an alternative product. Really listen to those little symptoms, which are telling you something, and kind of trust your gut on that. And that can lead you to safer alternatives for sure. You know, and that may mean, you know, cutting back on certain services to protect your health. I realize that can also be a financial question as well. But looking at what services you're doing, using PPE like gloves and masks, you know, improving the ventilation in your salon, and, you know, sometimes it's just even the order that you do things, you know, like cutting the hair before you dye it means you'll have less exposure to the dye, you know, the freshly dyed hair, right? Because you're doing some manipulation before the dye goes in. So things like that. There are a couple ways to do that. But it's really looking at what makes me feel better at the end of the day compared to what doesn't, and paying attention to that and adjusting accordingly.
Yeah, really good points. I think, you know, from my point of view, I always tell everybody, you need to work with companies that are willing to be radically transparent in what they're doing and providing you the detail of information, the glossary of information that's at your fingertips. And you have to start at their website, right? Do they have a full ingredient glossary? Are they disclosing all the ingredients? All of these things are really, you know, important, and really how you begin to measure, you know, the value that a company puts on being transparent. I think that speaks to that a lot. And more importantly, are they willing to answer your questions? I think we do a pretty darn good job. We have a lot of people on it, and sometimes we're not able to give everybody the answers they want because the internet is rampant with information, but we do the best we can, and that's important as well. So anyway, I think that that's important. And I think the other thing that you have to understand, especially through COVID, consumers are becoming passionate, and they are educating themselves at rates that we've never seen before. We have just had the opportunity to really attract a whole new generation of users as they've taken this time to really read and educate themselves, because they understand that moving forward, they need to live a healthier, cleaner lifestyle in everything they do: meat, poultry, agriculture, health, fitness, as well as the personal care products that they use. And so the space is rapidly growing, the consumer demand is growing, you're going to start being asked some pretty hard questions by your consumers. And you want to also be educated, and it's not always about your sales rep coming in and going, "This is the best," because you have to get beyond that now. It's you can't take it for face value. You have to do your homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've been surprised every now and then. So we'll talk to companies who who are not as transparent as they should be, and they're like, "Oh, our customers don't want all that tough information. Like, it's too complicated and it's going to confuse them." I'm like, "Have you been paying attention to who your customers are? Like, you wouldn't believe the questions that we get sometimes."
That's
really...
their excuse for not wanting to tell you.
That's right. Exactly. We're like, it's not that confusing, and people are pretty smart out there. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, before we head into questions, comments, concerns, Alex, I would love to give you the opportunity, give you the floor to let the stylists on here know, how they can be advocates for their salon, for themselves, for their community through Women's Voice for the Earth. What opportunities are you offering right now that they can hop on and onboard with you all?
Oh, terrific. Yeah, no, we would certainly love to have you all join us. Our website is womensvoices.org, which is pretty simple. You can go on there, you can click on get involved and kind of sign up, the initial thing, signing up for our email list, which you can, and you'll get emails, and we don't overload people with emails. It's, maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, but you'll get opportunities when we're like, okay, today we're all going to be working on this, and you'll get our latest fact sheets and newsletters and things like that. So that's a great way to start learning more about what we're doing and what opportunities there are. Other than that, I'm really encouraging you to realize how important your voice is. By speaking up with the suppliers of the products, asking questions to the manufacturer, like the 1-800 number on the the bottle of whatever. They take those calls, and every call they get, they know that's actually representing potentially thousands of customers. They don't get that many calls, but the calls that they do get, they actually pay attention to. So those are really important ways of using it. You don't have to be an expert on chemicals. You just have to be, you have a valid concern about something that you're experiencing, and they need to hear it. So that is the most important thing that we're always encouraging folks to do. If you get on our list, there will be opportunities, as Greg was talking about. There's the bill, and especially if you're in California, there's a bill about encouraging companies to disclose their fragrances. So that'll be heating up, I think, later on this summer. So there's something, immediately right now. There's also a bill in Congress. So we've got an action alert on our website, which you can do now, asking wherever you are in the country, asking your congressperson to join on and be a co-sponsor of this legislation. Congress is a little crazy right now. I don't know if that bill is moving immediately, but it's always good to kind of build up that support. And there are things that happen that come along as they happen. We've trained a number of salon workers over the years to be spokespeople. If you're interested in that, sometimes we'll get reporters when we want to work on an issue. They're like, "Do you have anybody in Phoenix who can talk about, what it's like being a salon worker and what they're, And so we'll connect people and sort of, train you how to talk to your reporter and how to tell your story. So if you're interested in that, you can email me. My email is alexs@womensvoices.org. You can put it through when you sign in to the email list. My colleague, Maria Ignacia, she has been coordinating calls in the last year of salon workers just to kind of get them to connect and tell each other their stories and potentially work on issues. So she'll be hosting a few more of those later on in the year. We don't have one scheduled yet. Again, if you sign up and indicate that you're a salon worker, we can connect you with her. and connect you on those calls. So lots of opportunities coming up, and we would love, for you to create opportunities for you to use your voices, because they're so important and they really do create change in the industry.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. I hope everyone is inspired to follow up with Women's Voices for the Earth after this call, because there's so many opportunities for you all to get involved and really, be an advocate for your industry. So before we hop into questions, which we are in just 1 second here, I just want to say, if anyone is hopping off right now because you have to go, if you are interested in learning more about Innocence Organic Beauty, if you have questions for us about our ingredients, our radical transparency, we will have answers for you. We do not hold back. So you can email wholesale@innocencebeauty.com. And you can learn more all on our website, innocence.beauty.com, about everything that we stand for, everything that we are working on with our people and planet partners, just like Women's Voices for the Earth. And to get started with maybe trying some products out in your salon, at your station, or at home, if you're not open back up yet, just email wholesale@innocencebeauty.com. Okay, so let's maybe get into some questions here. Okay, I have a question. It says, how do product safety rules in the United States compare with those in Europe and other countries? Are there any different labeling disclosure requirements that we can learn from?
Really good point.
Really
good
question.
point. Yeah, it's a great question. And there are different rules around the world. Europe seems to be leading. They definitely have more specific rules on what chemicals you can use, and more specifically what chemicals you can't use in personal care products. They have a whole cosmetics directive, which I think it's 1,900 chemicals or something you're not allowed to use in cosmetics, whereas here in the US, it's about 9 chemicals that we've officially banned from products. So that makes a big difference in terms of safety of products. There are some different labeling requirements. One of the key ones we found is in Europe, they're required to disclose 26 particular fragrance allergens. If they're present in a fragrance in a product, you don't have to disclose everything in your fragrance, but if you have one of these allergens, you have to disclose it, which is helping consumers and salon workers in Europe get a better idea of what they're actually allergic to and which fragrances are going to be more problematic than others. So we have made a lot of comparisons to that. We are getting some US companies, they're doing it in Europe, but they're not doing it here, trying to get them to voluntarily kind of take on those regulations and to provide an even playing field for both. So we've made some success with some companies there, but they tend not to like it when we compare, you get a label from Germany and a label from the US for the same product, and you're like, look how different this is, So.
Right. You know what, to that point, it was only really up to, I think, 3 years ago that Johnson & Johnson was running 2 formulas, a US formula and an EU formula, which just drove consumers crazy. It was just through that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But to piggyback a little bit onto what Alex was saying, is that the EU directives is a standard that every company that sells globally or in the EU needs to adhere to and meet. And it goes through a regulatory standard, what we call is the EU assessment, that a company needs to go through. And it's a third party that ensures that you're in alignment with the EU standards before you can even sell a product in the EU. And then they have a very stringent standard of managing that throughout the country. The United States is the only country of our stature and size that doesn't have a cosmetic standard, unfortunately. And the thought that the FDA has any type of oversight is, unfortunately, it doesn't, which is really sad. The cosmetic industry is a good old boys club. It was set up that way, and they continue to heavily lobby to make sure that it stays that way. The only time that the FDA has any type of oversight to product is what we call OTC, and that's a product that makes any type of a medical claim, like dandruff or a treatment shampoo or conditioner. Then it requires FDA oversight. So, but other than that, every country that we deal with, whether it be Australia,
Sorry?
Asia. Anyway.
I can't answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
the other thing I think
Room
we've
for me to
learned
carry anything else.
the other thing we've learned in the European Union is that they do a lot more testing for things
Yeah.
like contaminants and things like that. They've got this great website. You can see it's like, oh, look, here's the, the 15 products that have been taken off the shelves this week because
Right.
they were tested and they were found to either contain chemicals they weren't supposed to or to contain contaminants. That rarely happens in the US. We just don't have the systems to check up on that.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I'm sad there's no other questions from the group. Did we answer every question possible in the chat in our call? Well, perhaps. I actually have my own question that I wanted to kind of come back to. I kind of cut for time so we could get to the question portion. But I wanted to kind of ask about, Greg, we don't have any aerosols in our line. Why is that? And also, Alex, if maybe you can explain, why maybe choose something over an aerosol product.
Right. It's a really great question. I think that there's two things when you're looking at an aerosol. Well, actually three things. The first one is the propellant that's utilized in those types of products are highly suspect and toxic. And make up a great deal of the gases that, again, can really increase health risks due to exposure. So that's the one issue. The second issue, of course, is then the formula that you need to work through that type of disbursement system, which is also, tends to be very highly toxic as well. And then, of course, the other piece is the container. The aluminum is just, of course, environmentally not good as well, and it's not recyclable, and 99.99% of the time ends up in a landfill where it continues to off-gas. So that's primarily why we don't utilize any type of aerosols.
Mm-hmm. No,
and just to be sorry. So just to be clear too, it's the manner in which the aerosol can, because you can't take it apart, correct? Because
take it apart,
yeah.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing that I'd add to that is that one of the tricky things about aerosols versus something like a pump spray or whatever, I mean, it's really, efficient at like being able to cover your hair quickly, and it feels like an efficient way of doing things. It's also incredibly efficient at getting very, very small particles of product into your lungs. I mean, a pump spray, the size of the droplets is way bigger. I mean, it means you may breathe something in, but it's going to stop before it gets to your lungs, and you're going to be able to clear it out. It's those very, very small particles, which are made possible by aerosols largely, that you're breathing in deeply, you can't clear them out, and then they can cause real problems for you lung-wise. So aerosols can be a real, and there's very little data or even acknowledgement by the industry generally about how the potential dangers of aerosols and small particles. Yeah.
And I was a baby of Shaper, so the bigger the better on the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I remember as a kid, my mom always, she used, Aquanet.
Right.
I can still smell it by sense. So.
Yep.
Well, I think, if there's no other questions or comments, that's totally fine. We can wrap a couple minutes early here. Again, if you are wanting to get involved with Women's Voices for the Earth, we certainly encourage you to. They're a great partner for us as a company, but as well for yourself individually. You can head over to womensvoices.org and learn all you need to know about them and opportunities to get involved, like Alex was saying. And then if you are interested in, seeing it for yourself, our products, how they work, how they are, meeting that white space for you, maybe at your station or your salon to cut down on your exposure, we recommend that you reach out to us. Email us at wholesale@innersensebeauty.com. And I'll give Alex, Greg, last closing remarks.
Just thanks for this opportunity to talk about this stuff. Greg and I could geek out all day, but it's been a lot of fun. It's great to have see so many people who are interested in safer products.
Absolutely. And I thank you as well. And, just again, any questions you have, you could also reach out to me at greg@innocencebeauty.com. I'm always available to answer questions. And I thank you very much for taking your time today. It's awesome that beauty and wellness professionals are really becoming educated. It's what we've been working towards for the last 15 years. So, and thank you so much, Alex. And thank you for your mission, because you guys are amazing.
Oh, well, thank you. And, we can't do the work we don't do without all of you. So
Thank you.
really appreciate all your voices as well.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for joining the call. This is recorded. We will send it out, and we look forward to hearing from you all. All right. Have a good rest of your morning.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.